Hi, everybody. My name is Kavita Algu. I'm a primary care physician and palliative care physician here in Toronto. I work with the Inner City Health Associates Indigenous. So I'm not an organizer with Grassy Narrows, but working like we all are to be an ally and accomplice in their fight for justice. And I was asked to present on behalf of the Grassy Narrows organizer today, who is not available. So I will also just add, in my current workplace, even here, we see many clients from Grassy, and seeing firsthand just the devastation of the mercury poisoning on their bodies, their minds, their families, spiritually. And it was something we didn't really learn about in medical school at all, in terms of these kinds of poisonings, even though I went to medical school here and it's very prevalent here on our own lands. And so, as physicians, I think we all know it's really important for us to support Indigenous communities like Grassy Narrows as they fight these crises. And so we were supposed to have about 30 minutes. There was a lot of content in the presentation, so we did have to adapt a bit and remove a bunch. I'll try and speak very quickly. But for today, we're hoping that people will leave with an understanding of some of the history of this struggle. We can start to understand Grassy Narrows' current demands, and we hope to start sharing some ideas around how Grassy would like your organization to offer support and join their struggle. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about our goals for today. And so Grassy has been fighting this fight since the 1970s. And the community needs to continue to build and sustain relationships that will allow them to fight on for generations to come. And so one goal today is to deepen your organization's long-term support and solidarity for Grassy. And we're also asking for help to build institutional and political support in this fight. And we're hoping to make it clear that your support of support of the Grassy Narrows River Run, which is going to be happening this year, is one tangible, meaningful step that the community has identified that they would like people to support as much as they can. So with all of that in mind, we just want to take a moment to acknowledge the bravery, determination, and honor of Grassy Narrows youth who have been at the forefront of this intergenerational struggle for decades. And so hopefully we don't run into a tech issue here, but Grassy Narrows has the longest Indigenous blockade in Canada, protecting their lands, waters, animals, and their people. This started in 2002, and it's been ongoing for over 2 decades now. And so we wanted to start by sharing a video that the community made in honor of the 20th anniversary of the blockade.
For 20 years.
Can you hear sound?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Grassy Narrows has blockaded.
Early in December, about 40 First Nation residents blocked logging roads to protect their hunting, trapping, and fishing rights.
Demonstrated.
That's why they're afraid, because they know what they're doing to us is wrong.
Drummed. Marched. Built alliances. We are fighting against industrial logging and mining, racism and colonialism, and we are fighting for Indigenous freedom, land back, and protecting the sources of life. "20 years ago, we began a blockade. We kicked out the world's largest newsprint company, protected 15 million trees from being cut, and kept all industry out of our 7,000 square kilometer territory. We revived our ceremonies and helped build a movement. Ontario continues to propose industrial logging and mining on our land against our will. We will never back down. We will sing and dance and fight.
As long as the rivers flow and the sweetgrass grows in the sunshine.
And so Grassy Narrows is an Anishinaabe community in Treaty 3 area. The community has almost 1,000 people on the reserve and about 800 off reserve. Grassy Narrows people have cared for the lands and waters in their territories for countless generations. The territory is comprised of interconnected rivers, lakes, streams, and forests that provide cultural, spiritual, and physical sustenance for the nation. Grassy Narrows people thrived on the fish in the rivers as a major source of food, culture, and work. They were a vibrant, self-sufficient community with a strong culture, plenty of wild foods, and very high employment rates. But since the 1960s, Grassy Narrows has lived with one of the worst environmental pollution events in Canadian history that has robbed them of this way of life. The Dryden paper mill dumped 9,000 kilograms of mercury waste, as you know, a very potent neurotoxin, into the Wabigoon River upstream of Grassy Narrows. And this went on from 1962 to 1970, just about 100 kilometers upstream. New research from 2024 actually showed that ongoing discharge from the Dryden Mill is high in sulfate and organic matter, which encourages the growth of specific bacteria in the water, which has actually resulted in an increase in methyl mercury in the river, which is significantly more dangerous than the mercury because it's fat soluble and its structure makes it more easily absorbed within the food chains with really devastating effects. And this fat solubility means that it can cross things like blood-brain barrier and placenta and human placentas more easily as well. And so, you know, as you can see on the slide here, the mercury levels in the fish, even during that time, already rose to 50% more, and fish is the primary food source, protein source for the community. And so, in terms of the impacts of mercury poisoning, as you know, they're devastating. Neurotoxicity is one of the main effects, but it does affect many different organ systems. There's significant cognitive and mental health impacts, and the rate of youth suicidality, which was measured as suicide attempts in Grassy Narrows First Nation, is 3 times higher than other First Nations communities in Canada, which, as you know, already experience an alarmingly higher rate of suicidality than the general population. Research shows that the mercury is neurotoxic and associated with depression and suicidal behavior. These neurotoxic effects start even before birth with foods like fish consumed during pregnancy, and these effects may be exacerbated by the intergenerational transmission of mercury exposure, where environmental contamination affects not only those directly exposed, but also subsequent generations through multiple mechanisms. It's believed through things like epigenetics. And so as you can see in the bottom there was this 2023 study by Donna Mergler, and that author is quoted as summarizing part of the study as a quote, "We found that the mother's childhood mercury exposure is associated with today's nervous system disorders as well as psychological distress," end quote. And so today, so this is the Wabigoon River. Today, the poisoning of Grassy Narrows continues and the community continues to fight back. I'm sure you're familiar with these bills, but provincially, the Ford government in Ontario pushed through Bill 5, the Protect Ontario by Unleashing Our Economy Act. Despite massive protests, this will fast-track development projects without Indigenous consultation or consent and has gutted environmental protections. Grassy Narrows is one of the communities on the forefront of the ongoing battle against Bill 5, and wins for Grassy Narrows here will be wins for all of our communities. On the federal level, there are also many sites of struggle, as you are all familiar. Carney has committed in words to UNDRIP, which includes the rights of Indigenous people to free, prior and informed consent over matters impacting their lands. And he has pledged to, quote, keep up the momentum on reconciliation. But pressure is needed to ensure that he is forced to follow through. Many of his actions have acted against UNDRIP and the spirit of reconciliation, including pushing through pro-business development and resource extraction agenda through Bill C-5, the One Canadian Economy Act. As we discussed, the Dryden Mill is still operating and actively worsening the mercury poisoning of the community every day. But Grassy Narrows are pushing back. They've filed several courts. But Grassy Narrows are pushing back. So they have filed several court cases against the provincial and federal government with the goals of remediation of the poisons, compensation, shutting down the pollution from Dryden Mill, and an end to the industrial threats of the land, water, and people. One important current legal action is the challenge to Ontario's Mining Act. So ongoing industrial activities in and around Grassy Narrows territories is exacerbating the impacts of toxins still in the river, as we talked about, and threatening to continue to make new generations sick. A legal challenge is asking the court to declare that Ontario's Mining Act is unconstitutional. So if this challenge is successful, the action could require Ontario to rescind thousands of existing mining claims that have been staked on Grassy Narrows lands without their consultation and actually against their will. A staggering 93% of Grassy Narrows area is subject to the free entry mining regime brought in by the government, which now opens mining exploration and mining under Ontario law on many territories, including Grassy Narrows. And so this legal challenge by Grassy Narrows is the first application of its kind that has been brought in Ontario, and there's no similar decision or precedent in a treaty context. And so whatever happens here will be precedent setting and is important. Wait 1 second, let me just... Okay, I was just checking that. Okay. As was mentioned before, another area of action is around nuclear waste, and there is a plan to dump underground very near the Grassy Narrows headwaters nuclear waste that I believe is on a federal level that this is being planned. And so there is significant pushback against this by Grassy currently. There has been a lot of political responses recently, and I'm sure you've seen some of them, to Grassy Narrows advocacy on the federal and provincial level. And so there were a couple of videos they wanted played. So this is Doug Ford.
I see that some supporters of Grassy Narrows interrupted your speech this morning, and they've been following you around for more than a year. This is not the first time they've done this. They also interrupted the press conference with the Premier or with the Prime Minister. Yep. And I'm just wondering if you could take the moment to actually answer their question that they were asking, which is the province going to compensate Grassy Narrows for the mercury poisoning crisis that they have been through for the past several decades?
Let me tell you something. There's no one supported First Nations more than we have. We put in billions and billions, if not tens of billions of dollars supporting First Nations communities. And even on reserve, the federal government is responsible for that. So I know they've been following the Prime Minister around and myself, but they followed the previous Premier and the previous Prime Minister as well. So again, we're going to continue working with First Nations communities to bring prosperity and opportunities for them. That's what we're going to focus on.
And here is Mark Carney.
Hey, Mark Carney. I'm the woman that you told that you can outlast.
On Monday, March 30th, members of Grassy Narrows and Blubsamong First Nation protested outside a government press conference. They demanded that both the provincial and the federal governments compensate them fairly for mercury poisoning and shut down the Dryden paper mill, still polluting the river. A 2020 study found that Grassy Narrows women are 5 times more likely to die before age 60 than the Canadian general population, and 2.5 times more likely than First Nations people in general. Chrissy Isaacs, who suffered mercury poisoning from birth, disrupted Prime Minister Carney's remarks.
Doug Ford, Carney!
And this is how he chose to respond.
I can outlast her. New as MOI.
Hey, Mark Carney, I'm the woman that you told that you can outlast. Hey, Mark Carney.
And so what we know is that Grassy Narrows mobilization is being heard in the highest hallways of power. The responses from people like Doug Ford and Mark Carney tell us that they see the movement, and we must keep supporting Grassy Narrows and pushing for change. And so we wanted to switch gears a little bit and just talk about some of the other concrete ways that Grassy Narrows is mobilizing, and particularly around River Run, which is a big push they're mobilizing around right now. And this picture was from River Run 2 years ago. So the River Run began in 2010 on World Health Day. This year will be the 8th River Run. It generally happens every 2 years, but not always. It's called a River Run because of the blue banners held during the walk in an attempt to create the visual of a river running through the city of Toronto. River Run 2024 had 8,000 people attend, with over 100 organizations endorse the rally and the demands of Grassy Narrows. This was the biggest River Run to date. River Run, the next one is going to be in September 2026. Many community members from Grassy Narrows come all the way to Toronto. They make a special trip just to come for the River Run, and it's a deeply meaningful trip and a deeply meaningful day for them. And they talk about how this event gives them strength and renewal, especially seeing thousands of people in the streets supporting them on this day, sending a clear message. And so we'll come back to River Run a little bit at the end, but it's important to know that Grassy Narrows has a long history of land defense, as we talked just about like a tiny slice of it. There's so much more. But there have also been many victories so far. So one is the river cleanup. So the river's not clean, but there has been a victory around the cleanup. And after many years of campaigning and pressure, in 2017, the government of Ontario announced a commitment of $85 million to clean up the river. Since 2018, there have been studies being funded to better characterize the mercury in the river system, and experts are developing recommendations and designing ways to actually clean up the river. Grassy Narrows has achieved the construction of a mercury care home, which you can see on the bottom corner there, kind of a visual of what it should look like. The federal government committed to help build the Mercury Care Home in 2017. It broke ground about a year ago, and it's expected to be completed in 2027. It will be able to house 22 people and provide outpatient services to all members of Grassy Narrows affected by mercury poisoning. Grassy has also achieved a moratorium on logging of their territory for 10 years, which is a very significant win. In 2008, Grassy Narrows succeeded in kicking out the world's largest newsprint company out of their territory. Since that time, there's been no logging on the 7,000 square kilometers area of Grassy Narrows. And then in 2024, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry abandoned its plans to open up a portion of this territory to commercial logging, and they've abandoned this for the next 10 years. And so this is the first time that the province has set aside such a large portion of forest. And so Grassy Narrows has shown us that we can take on fights against much bigger forces and win the things needed to improve our lives, even against great odds. They have done this through deep organizing and creating unity in their community, healing and connection to culture, alliance building, grassroots action, and perseverance. In the process, they have helped to spark and lead movements for land back, environmental justice, freedom, and defense of the sources of life. And we have a lot to learn from Grassy Narrows. But there's still much that needs to be won before the people of Grassy Narrows can enjoy the good life that they had before mercury poisoning. And so their current demands are compensation for all. Grassy Narrows demands that compensation for all its people for the ongoing mercury crisis. It will help them to restore their health, way of life, self-determination, and protect their lands and waters. They want the mill to be shut down Dryden Mill. They want no logging or mining on their territory, and they want restoration of their culture. And I missed their no, and they want no nuclear waste. So these demands matter because they'll bring justice to the community and set a precedent and restore a way of life to Grassy Narrows that was taken from them. And so how can you support Grassy Narrows? So there's a number of ways, but this was a list developed by the Grassy organizers who worked very closely with the community. And so what the asks are to endorse the demands from Grassy Narrows. There is a Google form that can be completed by organizations. Just so you know, they're simplified on the form, so they're condensed. So they're those 5 things, but condensed into 3 demands: compensation, ending pollution, and restoration of culture. And I believe the form may have been sent already. We're asking that people please email information about Grassy Narrows to your own membership to spread awareness about what's happening to the community and their fight back. Please also advocate and educate about Grassy Narrows in all of the spaces where you sit. And I know likely many of you sit in many different places and are wearing a lot of different hats. And the more we can advocate, the better. And as we talked about, if we can build a bigger, stronger network, that's going to be better for the community, and wins for Grassy Narrows are really wins for all of us. They do have a website, freegrassy.net. So please visit there. There you can sign. They have a petition to sign. You can join on their mailing list directly as individuals. You can make a donation, including monthly donations. There's t-shirts that you can buy. That proceeds go to help fund the community. If you are active on social media, please follow Grassy Narrows and boost their posts. They do get a lot of activity from socials. And lastly, we're asking organizations to come to River Run 2026. The more visible your presence is with sign or banners, even if it's just a few people, but if they can show the breadth of institutional support for this cause, it is incredibly helpful with their advocacy. And so that was sort of all of the things I had to go through today. And just to summarize, as you know, Grassy Narrows has been struggling for justice for decades. And the movement's only growing, and they are winning. And now more than ever, we need to unite together to push back against environmental degradation, the targeting of Indigenous communities, and assaults on Indigenous rights. And as we've said, Grassy Narrows is really at the forefront of this struggle in many ways. And any gains are really gains for all of us, and our movements are stronger together. So we're hoping that this could be the start of, as we talked about at the beginning, some longer term relationship building and support for Grassy. And, the mandates definitely seem, there seems like a lot of overlap based on what I heard in the brief conversations. So as I mentioned, I'm not an organizer with Grassy. But I do help support some things. I do know they remain organizer well. So if there's any discussions, questions, comments, or things you want me to take back, I'd be happy to do that.